Hey fellows, I know that this is a kind of late follow the fellows presentation, but I think you are going back to your own countries and we all are, and we will be working on different projects, including our CEPs, and this information may be useful for you as you may be doing your CEPs and you want and may be considering to make them more disability inclusive. So first half of my presentation would be about my personal experience here in the United States. What kind of support did I get for me to be able to live independently in the community without having to bring family members here and so on? In the second half, I will speak about the specificities of advocacy work here in the United States and what we can learn on how to do it and what kind of experiences we can utilize from there. So first thing that I want to get you to get from here is that when responsibilities related to assisting a person with disabilities is divided between different groups and different stakeholders, it's much easier on everyone and it's not a burden for anyone. It actually creates more jobs, it creates more wealth, it it creates more wealth moving around, which is very important that people get, the salaries and people get the services. So two services that I have here is mobility and orientation training. So that's a person who teaches me how to move around. I met her first Monday of my stay here in Boston, Massachusetts, where I am doing my practicum. And ever since, I would have one class per week, which would be around hour and a half and 2 hours. And that class lasted for 2 months or so. It's the last month now that I'm not asking for her help anymore. She taught me how to go to my work, but also how to go to certain stores, shops, how to cross the road, and so on. The way that she taught me sometimes is longer than a sighted person will take uh, but this is the best way for me as I cannot cross roads diagonal. I have to follow something like a barrier, a wall, or um, a sidewalk or some curb that so that I know where I am exactly at, so that I don't get lost. And first few times I did get lost, and this is why I needed her, the mobility and orientation trainer, to show me where did I get lost and how can I go back and find my way. Now I am at a point where I can explore on my own certain places. So what I would do is I would pick a spot that I know at a given block, and then I just walk around that block. Even if I don't know the road, I just walk around it. I don't go too far away from it so that I don't go off the road, but I still walk around and can explore an unknown place that way. I would say that streets in Boston are very blind friendly in a way that there is not much on the street that shouldn't be there, like additional poles, some things on a shoulder level that cane cannot detect. There are not much of these. So it's kind of easy to walk, and the blocks are pretty much square and pretty much straightforward. The next service I have is personal assistance service. So I have somebody coming every Friday for 4 hours. It's never been exactly 4 hours because I don't usually need her for that long to help me around with few things. For example, grocery shopping, because to shop I have to collect a lot of things together and they're heavy, and I went to the store a few times on my own. So I would go there and somebody would take me around, like one of the store staff members would take me around, and I would tell what I need to buy and they would select me what I needed to buy. But then carrying all this heavy stuff is not so easy. I also ask her to, for example, see if some of my clothes is dirty, like has a stain or something that I did not notice and I didn't know that I had it and that it needs to be washed. I mean, I do all the washing on my own and cleaning the bathtubs and the sinks and all of that, but I just need to be told. Uh, Also, sometimes things with banks, with paperwork. Uh, when my PNC cards didn't work, I had to ask for her help. Uh, Something else I was also gotten, I was offered an opportunity to either live in a host family or live in an apartment. But living in an apartment meant that I would be living close to my office, so on a walking distance, which was very important for me to be able to go to the office because living in a host family in the outskirts that may have complicated my travel route and I may not be able to come to work whenever I need to come to work. Um, yes. So this assistance I have throughout the whole period of time. So basically, I'm receiving from 6 to 5 hours of assistance per week, which is not a lot. It is a lot of money because it's here in the United States and with all licensing and everything, but it's not a lot in terms of human labor. And for some of these things, for teaching, for personal assistance, if you will involve disabled people, you can even employ volunteers or people who are not like trained professionals, but who could, help that person learn their way and get around. Um, and that is not otherwise that much of support. The first day when I went to work, actually, I went there first day by myself because the first day was not my day, and I got my first training on Monday, and on Tuesday I was already able to go there on my own and return back home. I was a little bit upset first. It was part of a cultural shock that nobody at my organization offered to at least take me home once just to see that I can manage and walk my way. But then I realized that they did this exactly because they had quote unquote normal expectations of me, because they most of them also have different types of disabilities. They work with people with disabilities closely, so they really know our possibilities and what we can do and cannot do. Because even if I get lost, I figure it out pretty quickly from the echo that the street makes and the sounds, but also from like the light, the way the light is around, because I can see the light. I have a light perception. So I also use echolocation. So I would clap to make sure that there is a wall approaching, or to find out if there is an open space and not the wall. I was also actually offered by IREX before I would come here to take take somebody with me as a personal assistant to the United States, bring over. And I thought a lot about this, and I asked other blind people, and some said that yes, I should do it, some said I shouldn't. In the end, I decided that I would be much more independent without anyone else, because I would have to bring a parent, as none of my friends would be able to stop studying or quit their jobs for 3 months. And actually, for exploring the city and learning how accessible it is, it's better when you walk around on your own. Because when I'm taken around by somebody and I'm holding on to somebody's elbow, I don't realize what's around me, what kind of barriers, because people walk me around these barriers. Therefore, it was not only an opportunity for me to learn about the organization internally, but also an opportunity for me to practice my independent living skills, because there are not so many services available for that in Georgia. Um, yeah. And sometimes we need to relearn and learn new places. And I got mobility and orientation training there only once. And the roads have been changed ever since a lot. Now, when we talk about the advocacy and advocacy specificities. So, first thing, culture of cooperation. Even if my organization is at odds with another private company, with a business, they still would be very constructive and work with them on some issues, but oppose them on the others. I will bring you an example. They are advocating for the wheelchair warranty expansion, so that basically the producers or providers of the wheelchairs would have to repair them faster, would have to replace the broken wheelchair and like provide a temporary replacement while the broken one is being repaired, because people need wheelchairs to go to work, to go to hospitals, go any places, and they cannot be sitting at home and locked up in their homes for months while the repairment is happening. So one of the companies that obviously does not want this law because it would give them more responsibility, uh, officially testified against their bill in the state house. But my organization still works with them on the improving of the service, so improving of the customer service, despite the fact that this company publicly has opposed the bill that my organization is advocating for. Still, on an individual level, when it comes to the services that that very company provides, my organization is still ready and willing to talk to them and consult them on how to improve their services so that wheelchair users benefit in the end. Another culture is thanking culture and being and gratitude. It's very important that they are able to send thank you notes to all the congressmen, all public servants who have supported their bills, their propositions, even if these bills did not come through. They still write thank you notes to all the supporters and follow up, and they spend a lot of resource on that. Well, they have obviously organizational funding, and that's another thing that I want to talk about a little bit. But something else that I have not seen in Georgia, but for a good reason, in Georgia, we are always told that there are certain members of parliament who are dealing with quote unquote disability issues. So one of these people is person with disabilities who is now in the ruling party, and he's a member of parliament. So when I tried to reach out to the member of parliament from my district, because he's representing my district, and talk to him on disability issues, he immediately told me that I should go to the disabled member of the parliament, and that's who can put the agenda forward. So this is not something that we practice a lot in Georgia, but here in the United States, they mobilize people to write individual letters to their representatives, to their congressmen, to their senators, to their congresspersons, I would say, and asking them to support certain bills or not support certain bills. So this way they receive, the Congress people receive hundreds of letters. Hey, I'm from your constituency. I vote for you in elections. Or like, I'm potentially your voter. So please support this law, or please do not support this bill. And most of Congress people receive these emails because many, as I said, the NGOs mobilize people to write to their congressmen, to their senators, to their elected officials. And that way it gets more coverage. Of course, some of the legislators don't even react to this because they receive thousands of these, but it's you throw it out. So it's still kind of this information is being gathered, and the opinion is being created within the Congress about certain things, because okay, maybe out of 200 people, maybe 50 of them will read these letters and see that there is this law that needs to be passed, this bill that needs to be passed and made the law. And of course, in terms of funding, I think it's going to be no secret and no doubt to any of you that unlike many of our countries where we receive project-based funding, so funding for few, usually from 2 to 3 years in the best case scenario, funding for a given project, and you are supposed to advocate for certain law and bill to be passed as a law throughout these few years, and then you are out of money and you cannot have people who would call potential disabled people who could reach out to their congressmen. And they also, here in my host organization, they draft these letters. It's not something that a regular citizen has to sit and write down. They write down the templates for them so that they can just send them and just sign something. So make things for people very simple. Also mobilize people to go and testify in front of the Congress. This is actually not an option in Georgia. Like when the bill is being under consideration, it is up to the chairperson of a given committee in the parliament if they will allow representatives of civil society to speak, and they allow only few representatives of civil society to speak due to the time constraints, and they do not have an obligation to consider the written testimonies from citizens. So we don't have testimony collection culture in Georgia either. But here in the United States, it's very high. So they organizations ask regular people to go to Congress, or at least to write to Congress and say how do they feel when their wheelchair breaks down? How do they feel when their child is taken away just because they are disabled parents? How do they feel when they have a voucher from the state to obtain state housing, so pay for their rent, but there is no accessible housing, there is no accessible apartment that they can actually rent? And people actually go out and speak about these things. The organizations do help them write these testimonies too sometimes, and even practice their public speaking skills, but not always. And people still go and speak on their own. Of course, organizations can also submit testimonies, but a large portion of organizations' resource and time of my colleagues at DPC, a Disability Policy Consortium, is swollen by the need to call out to potential persons with disabilities and tell them to write down testimonies, send out testimonies, or to speak at a given Congress hearing. Yeah. So, for example, in Georgia, only when it comes to constitutional amendments, there is an obligation on behalf of the parliament to organize public discussions where everybody can actually come up to the stage and take the mic and speak their mind. What do they think about a constitution? Yeah. So with funding, what I was trying to say is that the funding here works a bit different. Of course, there are projects-based grants, but there are also grants that fund organization as such. So without any need to be able to achieve something very tangible. And I saw this because people here also advocate for certain laws and bills to be passed for years, like this parenting bill that would protect disabled parents from arbitrary deprivation of their parental rights and child custody. They have been advocating for it since 2012, 2013, so it's been 10, 11 years. For some other bills, they also have been introduced a few times throughout, because also the way proceedings work here is that after one term of 2 years expires, if the bill is not passed into a law, you have to introduce it again, and it has to go through all the same committees and all the same hearings over again to be for the state legislature to be able to pass it. So these are the things that I wanted to mention, and also just the culture that these people, the regular people, that they keep testifying, that they keep their energy. They don't say, oh, I spoke last time, there was no result, nothing has happened, nothing has changed, and nothing is going to change, so I better not waste my time. No. Every time they're called, well, of course, not all of them, but many of them, every time they're called, they keep doing it. They keep going, keep testifying, keep speaking up their mind until the change is made. And that is something that also differentiates my society and maybe many of yours from the one here. So two last things that I want to talk about. And of course, reach to me out if you have any questions you can write me on Facebook or on my email address. We can speak about this in DC or anywhere else if you wish. So two things. One is that it's not so hard to involve disabled person in a project as it may seem. It may not even take as much time as you would think from your schedule if you will outsource and find some services in your community that can help that person to participate in your project. And second is that we should be exploring more innovative ways and more different ways of advocacy and going out and advocating for our cause, despite the fact that we may be opposed, that we may have personal arguments with certain companies, with certain potential allies, even with certain senators about something else. Our political opinions may not be always the same, but we just still should go and talk to them about issues, no matter how badly we have criticized them in the previous times and in previous years. Thank you so much, and wish everyone good luck and successful start to your CEPs and to my CEP as well.